The San Francisco 49ers have signed a quarterback. It is a familiar face, which is kind of funny because of the team that the 49ers are playing this weekend against the Chargers and who they are bringing in. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh, Trey Lance. But the 49ers have signed Nate Sudfeld. If you don't recall, Nate Sudfeld was signed, given a $2 million guaranteed contract to come in and back up quarterback Trey Lance. Funny story about this whole situation. I remember heading into, I think it was 2022 training camp, where it was Trey Lance is the starter. No more Jimmy G. Jimmy G is off to the side field, being a spectacle during training camp because he was on the team, but he wasn't practicing with the team. The 49ers are trying to trade him. He was just off to it was the weirdest situation I'd ever seen at a 49ers training camp. And let's be honest, we've seen some weird situations at 49ers training camp. Well, it's Trey Lance. He's going to be the quarterback one. Nate Sudfeld, he's going to be the backup to Trey Lance. The San Francisco 49ers draft Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, to be what I would consider to be a camp arm or a guy who's going to be on the practice squad. I admittedly I've talked about the story before. I did not watch Brock Purdy, literally, because you guys know how I've explained training camp and how I evaluate training camp is there are multiple ways to go about evaluation. You watch the football and you just watch where the ball goes and you make evaluations from guys who make catches, make plays, PBUs, would-be tackles. You look for would-be sacks, things like that. Or you hone in on individual players. For example, I might look at just straight up watch Talanoa Hufanga and just watch what he does on any given play. I don't pay attention to what's going on with anything else, or I hone in on an offensive lineman or a defensive tackle or a linebacker. Well, because in my brain, it was Trey Lance as quarterback one, Nate Sudfeld, $2 million guaranteed contract. He's going to be the guy. And he wasn't bad either. He had a good arm. He could toss it downfield. He would make some good throws. Jason Aponte, you guys know very well. Like, we were at training camp watching training camp. If you ever hear me say, "Wake up, honey, Sudfeld dart," it became an inside joke with us because he would throw some darts. He would throw some nice passes. But this was one of my biggest learning things from a training camp was because Brock was the seventh round draft pick, Mr. Irrelevant. I had already made up in my mind he was a practice squad guy. So my focus was going to evaluate Trey Lance, and then if it wasn't Trey Lance, I was then watching other positions. I wasn't paying attention to the quarterback really. And so the long story short is I didn't pay attention to Brock Purdy in his rookie training camp. So when people were asking me about how does Brock Purdy look? I'm like, he's okay. I'm not watching him. And he would only get a handful of reps, maybe, one or two plays in the rotation, then it would go back to Trey. I wasn't honed in on him. I wasn't evaluating Brock. And that's where I learned, you can't go into a training camp counting guys out. It's football. It's competition. You never know who is going to rise. And sure enough, at the end of that camp, the San Francisco 49ers cut Nate Sudfeld, which completely took me by surprise. They kept Brock Purdy on the active, and they restructured Jimmy Garoppolo to be the backup quarterback. So, welcome back, Nate Sudfeld. Good to have you back in the building. And again, it's wild because Nate was a guy who was very close to Trey Lance. He was brought in to kind of be a mentor to Trey Lance and, help that guy kind of get up to speed. And now it looks like you'll see Nate Sudfeld on the preseason field at Levi's Stadium with Trey Lance coming in on the other side for the Chargers. So just the NFL's crazy, man. I don't know what's going on right now with all these reunions and you know, Jim Harbaugh coming back, Navarro Bowman coming back, Will Tukuafu coming back as the defensive line coach for the Chargers, Greg Roman, who we all love, coming back for the San Francisco or on the Chargers as their OC. So a lot of parallels in this final preseason game for the 49ers against the Chargers. And they just throw another parallel onto the top with bringing back Nate Sudfeld, Trey Lance's former backup, who got beat out by Brock Purdy. Now Brock Purdy's the franchise quarterback. Now Trey Lance is on the Chargers fighting for the backup spot. Now Nate Sudfeld is back with San Francisco 49ers in a spot role. Because, again, the 49ers clearly have seen enough of Tanner Mordecai that they don't want to see any more of that. I thought that Carter Bradley did a really good job bouncing back. I don't think he had a perfect game, but I think you were able to see his arm talent. You know, those were some of the things that I talked about from training camp. Again, not taking what I learned from Brock Purdy. Yeah, this guy Carter Bradley probably not going to, you know, make the roster, but I'm going to watch him. And you could see Carter Bradley has some arm talent. Now, we saw what he did in his first preseason game. Looked like the lights were really bright and, you know, kind of played that way. Against the Raiders, looked like he was more settled down, looked like he was more confident and all of those things. And I think he played better as a result. And you could kind of see some of the arm talent that he possesses. So I think people are starting to see that a little bit more. But again, they're bringing in Nate Sudfeld mostly because I'm assuming he understands the offense. He's worked within the offense. Obviously, it's been a couple years, but, you know, he's been in that system. He understands what's being asked of him. He understands most likely the terminology and all of those things. It's obviously going to be a challenge for him to work with a lot of receivers he probably hasn't worked with. You know, getting thrown into the fire a little bit, but it'll be interesting to see. Does Nate Sudfeld actually put up a strong enough case to, I don't know, maybe stick around on the practice squad or something like that? So with the preseason game coming up, I expect to see a lot of Mac Jones, a lot of Carter Bradley, a lot of Nate Sudfeld. Actually, we might not even see as much Mac Jones with this signing. I would assume that the 49ers are going to run a lot of backups. I would assume they're going to try to keep all their starters off the field if they can and give them 2 weeks to get healthy, get ready, and get going for the beginning of the regular season, where they are going to travel to Seattle for an opening Week 1 division game against a division rival. All right, Sudfeld darts are back. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.